There's something most people are quietly afraid of: being alone. Not just physically alone, but truly alone with their own thoughts. The moment there is silence, we reach for something: a phone, music, conversation, anything to avoid that empty space. But what if that space you keep running from is actually where your power is? What if the reason you feel restless, confused, or disconnected isn't because you spend too much time alone, but because you don't spend enough time alone? Paramahansa Yogananda taught that solitude is not isolation, it is the doorway to self-realization. And until you learn how to be alone, you will never fully know who you are. In today's world, we are constantly surrounded by noise. Notifications, conversations, content, opinions. Your mind is always being filled with something. And slowly, without realizing it, you lose touch with your own inner voice. You start thinking what others think, feeling what others expect you to feel, and living in a way that keeps you externally connected, but internally disconnected. This is why spending time alone daily is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Yogananda emphasized that when you sit in silence, away from external distractions, you begin to reconnect with your true nature. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Your mind may become restless. Thoughts may come rushing in. You may feel boredom, unease, even anxiety. But this is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you are finally seeing what has always been there. Most people avoid this moment. They escape it. But the ones who stay, the ones who learn to sit with themselves, they begin to discover something deeper. Clarity. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, your mind doesn't have the space to process. You keep moving from one thing to another without ever fully understanding what you feel or why you feel it. But in solitude, something shifts. Your thoughts slow down. Your awareness deepens. You begin to see things more clearly. Yogananda taught that wisdom does not come from outside, it comes from within. But to access that inner wisdom, you must create space. Solitude creates that space. Another reason why spending time alone is so powerful is because it strengthens your relationship with yourself. Think about it. How often do you actually sit with yourself, without distraction, without trying to fix anything, without trying to escape? For most people, the answer is rarely. And because of that, their relationship with themselves remains weak. They depend on others for validation, for distraction, for emotional support. But when you begin to spend time alone, you start building a different kind of connection. You start understanding yourself. You begin to notice your patterns, how you react, what triggers you, what brings you peace. And this awareness gives you control. Not control over external events, but control over how you respond. Yogananda often spoke about mastering the self. And that mastery does not come from controlling the world, it comes from understanding your own mind. Solitude is where that understanding begins. There is also a deeper emotional benefit to being alone. When you are constantly busy, you suppress your emotions. You don't give yourself the time to feel fully. And those unprocessed emotions stay within you, affecting your thoughts, your behavior, your energy. But when you sit alone, those emotions begin to surface. You may feel sadness. You may feel frustration. You may even feel things you cannot explain. And while this can feel uncomfortable, it is also healing. Because now, you are allowing yourself to process what you have been carrying. Yogananda taught that true healing begins with awareness. When you become aware of your emotions without judgment, they begin to lose their hold on you. And slowly you feel lighter. Another powerful aspect of solitude is that it reduces your dependence on external stimulation. When you are always seeking something to do, something to watch, someone to talk to, your mind becomes addicted to activity. And this addiction makes it difficult to feel content in stillness. But when you practice being alone, you begin to break that pattern. You start realizing that you don't need constant stimulation to feel okay. You can simply sit, breathe, and be. And this realization is incredibly freeing. Yogananda described this state as inner contentment, a sense of peace that does not depend on external conditions. It is not something you chase. It is something you uncover. And solitude helps you uncover it. There is also a spiritual dimension to this practice. When you are constantly engaged with the outside world, your attention is always outward. But in solitude, your attention turns inward. And in that inward focus, you begin to sense something deeper. A quiet presence. Yogananda taught that this presence is your true self, the part of you that is beyond thoughts, beyond emotions, beyond identity. It is calm, aware, and always present. But because your attention is usually scattered, you don't notice it. Solitude brings you back to it. This is why meditation is often practiced in silence. Not because silence is special, but because it removes distractions. It allows you to go deeper. And as you go deeper, you begin to experience something that is difficult to explain but easy to feel, a sense of connection, not with the outside world, but with your own existence. This connection changes the way you live. You become less reactive, less dependent, less anxious. Because now, you are not constantly seeking something outside to feel complete. You are connected within. Another important benefit of spending time alone is that it improves your focus. When your mind is constantly switching between tasks, your ability to concentrate weakens. But in solitude, when you give your attention to one thing, your breath, your thoughts, your presence, you begin to train your mind. And this training carries into your daily life. You become more focused, more present, more aware. Yogananda emphasized that concentration is one of the most important skills you can develop. And solitude is where that skill is strengthened. But perhaps the most important reason to spend time alone daily is this: it helps you remember who you are. Not the roles you play. Not the expectations you carry. Not the image you present to the world. But the real you. Because in the presence of others, it is easy to lose yourself. You adapt, you adjust, you perform. But in solitude, there is nothing to perform. There is nothing to prove. There is only you. And in that space, something beautiful begins to happen. You start to feel comfortable in your own presence. You start to enjoy your own company. You start to realize that being alone is not something to fear, it is something to embrace. And as this realization deepens, your relationship with the world also changes. You no longer seek constant validation. You no longer fear silence. You no longer feel the need to escape yourself. Because now you are at home within. And when you are at home within yourself, everything else becomes easier. You move through life with a different kind of stability, a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on who is around you or what is happening outside. And this is where solitude begins to transform from something you try to do into something you naturally value. Paramahansa Yogananda taught that spending time alone is not about disconnecting from the world, but about reconnecting with the source of your strength. When you begin to experience that inner connection, you realize that solitude is not empty, it is full. Full of clarity, awareness, and a kind of peace that cannot be found in constant activity. As you continue this practice daily, even for a few minutes, you start noticing subtle changes. Your reactions slow down. Situations that once triggered you begin to lose their intensity. You don't feel the same urgency to respond to everything immediately. There is a gap now, a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you have freedom. Freedom to choose how you think. Freedom to choose how you act. Freedom to not be controlled by every passing emotion. Yogananda emphasized that true freedom is internal. It is not about controlling the world, it is about not being controlled by it. And that kind of freedom can only be developed when you learn to sit with yourself without distraction. Another important shift that happens through solitude is that your creativity begins to awaken. When your mind is constantly filled with external input, there is no room for original thought. You are always reacting, always consuming, always processing what already exists. But when you step into silence, your mind begins to create. Ideas start to flow. Insights arise. Solutions to problems you've been struggling with suddenly appear. Not because you forced them, but because you gave your mind the space to think. Yogananda taught that intuition is a higher form of intelligence, one that does not rely on logic alone. And intuition becomes stronger when the mind is calm, focused, and inwardly aware. Solitude strengthens that connection. There is also a powerful emotional independence that develops when you spend time alone regularly. You begin to rely less on others for your sense of happiness. This does not mean you stop valuing relationships. It means your happiness is no longer dependent on them. You enjoy people, but you don't need them to feel complete. And this changes the quality of your relationships. You stop seeking validation. You stop trying to fill a void. Instead, you connect from a place of wholeness. Yogananda often said that when you are connected to your inner self, you bring more peace into every interaction. You listen better. You respond with more awareness. You are not reacting from insecurity, you are responding from clarity. And that creates deeper, more meaningful connections. Another subtle but powerful effect of solitude is that it helps you detach from unnecessary noise. Not just external noise, but internal noise as well. The constant stream of thoughts, worries, comparisons, and doubts begins to slow down. Not because you forced it to stop, but because you stopped feeding it. When you are always distracted, your mind never gets the chance to rest. But in solitude, when you simply observe your thoughts without engaging with them, something shifts. The mind becomes quieter. Yogananda taught that peace is not something you create, it is something you uncover when the noise settles. And solitude is one of the most effective ways to allow that settling to happen. As this inner quiet grows, you begin to experience life differently. You notice things you didn't notice before. You appreciate small moments. You feel more present. And this presence becomes your anchor. Even when life becomes busy, even when challenges arise, you have a place within you that remains steady. And that steadiness comes from the time you have spent alone, building that connection. There is also a deeper spiritual realization that begins to emerge. When you sit in silence, without distraction, without trying to do anything, you begin to sense that you are more than your thoughts. You begin to feel that there is an awareness behind everything, watching, observing, simply being. Yogananda described this as the true self, the part of you that is untouched by external conditions. And when you connect with that part, even briefly, it changes your perspective. You no longer feel lost in your thoughts. You no longer feel defined by your emotions. You begin to experience a sense of inner stability that is not easily shaken. And this is the real purpose of solitude, not just to relax, not just to think, but to reconnect with that deeper awareness. But this requires consistency. You cannot experience the full benefit of solitude by doing it once in a while. It has to become a daily practice. Even 10 minutes of intentional silence can make a difference. The key is not the duration, it is the sincerity. Sit without distraction. Be present. Observe your breath, your thoughts, your state of being. Don't try to change anything. Don't try to achieve anything. Just be. At first, your mind may resist. It may feel uncomfortable. It may try to pull you back into distraction. But if you stay with it, gently, without force, the resistance begins to fade. And in its place, a quiet sense of peace begins to emerge. Over time, this peace becomes familiar. It becomes something you look forward to. Not as an escape from life, but as a way to connect more deeply with it. Because when you are connected within, you experience everything more fully. Your work becomes more focused. Your relationships become more meaningful. Your decisions become clearer. And most importantly, your life feels more aligned. So instead of fearing solitude, begin to embrace it. See it not as emptiness, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to understand yourself, to heal, to grow, and to reconnect with the part of you that is always present, always aware, always whole. Because the truth is, the more comfortable you become being alone, the more powerful you become in every area of your life. If this message resonated with you, take a few minutes today to sit in silence and experience it for yourself. And if you want more deep, practical spiritual insights like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and continue this journey toward clarity, inner strength, and true self-awareness.